All right, back live tonight on In Focus. We turn to this now. Eskom chairperson Mpho Makwana has resigned. Comes as Electricity Minister. Dr. Newzroom Afrika praised the utility for a notable improvement in power generation, which has led to lower levels of power cuts. South African National Energy Development Institute Secretariat, Professor Sampson Mamphweli, joins us now for more on that. Prof, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. We'll look a little bit on the performance of the grid, but of course this is the breaking news this hour. The new chairperson, hardly appointed a year ago, has now resigned and will be leaving at the end of this month. This comes on the back of a dispute we seem to have picked up over the appointment of a new CEO. Recently reading in the news that there was a letter that was sent to the board to say, well, you need to consider candidates over the age of 60, while the board itself has said they had no intention really of considering someone over the age of 60. Is that, do you think, the point of contention here?
Good evening to you, Thabo, and the viewers. So in terms of the governance processes, government is not supposed to enter into operational issues. They're supposed to give the board what we call the compact, which is basically a document that says, this is our company and this is how we would like you to run it. In case of Eskom, they tell them, we want to see the coal fleet or the generation fleet operating at this particular level in terms of the energy availability factor. We want to see the financial performance in this particular format and all that. And the appointment of the executives then becomes the responsibility of the board. So the board then looks at the compact and then look around and say, what type of executives do we need to implement this particular compact? Because if the board recruits the wrong executives, then they are bound to fail, and then the board will then basically fail. So I've also picked up what you've mentioned in terms of government saying you should consider X, Y, Z. In my view, if that was the case, then it would have been wrong. And the resignation of the chair, the board chair, even though one cannot necessarily fix it at that, it basically smells something of that particular nature.
The others were saying it could also be the other side, where it just recently emerged, one of the newspapers reporting that the church to which the chairperson is the Secretary of Council owes Eskom 2 million rands, and this has been allowed to happen because the church gets electricity directly from Eskom. Of course, the chairperson said, I know nothing about what the church owes. Others are saying, well, it's highly improbable because you are the secretariat. Surely you have to look at what finances are coming into this church. You are well aware.
Yeah, so that becomes kind of conflict of interest, which the chairperson of the board should then declare to say to Eskom, my church is owing you this particular amount of money, if he's aware of that. But as someone who is not on the operational side of Eskom, it becomes something which is kind of distant. But in terms of governance principles, good governance principles, he is supposed to then declare that and indicate how the church plans to deal with that particular matter. In that particular case, people who advance high standards of governance will go to an extent of resigning from that particular position because it won't go along with the good governance principles. So if that's the case, it could also be something that has triggered all this. But over and above all these issues that people could be picking up around, I think one of the biggest issue has been the fact that Eskom has been going through quite some difficult times, some challenges. under the leadership of the current chairperson who has now resigned. In my view, his board has done quite well, and in many instances, under the circumstances. There are three things that one can look at. The breaking up of Eskom into three business units. Remember that this is something that was announced by the minister way back in 2019, and it was not happening until the new board came on board, and then they ran with that, and it's starting to come out quite clearly. The maintenance program at Kusile, for instance, with the various units coming back to life, that was done under their watch. The implementation of the Energy Action Plan, before the Energy Action Plan was announced, I'm quite aware of meetings where the current chairperson pushed for root cause analysis of the various power stations and get to the bottom of the problem, so to speak. And 6 power stations were identified, Duva being one of them. And ever since then, Eskom has focused on dealing with those particular power stations. Eskom, as things stand, they know the problems. They know how much is needed to fix the problem. The only challenge that we have at the moment, for me, is the lack of the financial resources. The structure that the financial relief that government gave to Eskom was supposed to have been structured quite differently. There are a few mistakes also that the board chairperson and the board has made. You will recall when they applied for to the national treasury for Eskom not to report certain things, including corruption and all those kind of things, instead of applying for Eskom to be exempted from the procurement process. Those are some of the salient mistakes that the current board has made. But give and take, I would say the current board has done quite well so far under the current circumstances. And obviously, with the appointment of the Minister of Electricity, who has now kind of taken over Eskom, if you look at the way he reports. And now you've got Minister Gordhan, you've got the Minister of Electricity. It becomes very difficult in terms of governance when one looks from far to say who is in charge. Is the board in charge? Is government in charge? Because government, in my view, was supposed to stand outside and provide political oversight and assist in the implementation of the Energy Action Plan.
Could it be, I mean, that you're bringing a third dynamic to this, could it be again in the war of the control of Eskom that the board chairperson, even though he has achieved the things that you say he has achieved in terms of performance, felt as if he's quite redundant there. His role is quite downplayed because of the presence of the Minister of Electricity, who does all the updating, does all the reports, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the briefings done by the minister, they go down to unit level. Sometimes he's doing the briefings with some Eskom executives, even below the CEO. So in terms of governance, for me, I've always wondered what was happening there, because if we are to give a briefing at minister level, because at that level you provide political oversight, I would expect that the board chairperson will be the person accompanying you. The board chairperson may choose to bring the CEO along or the acting CEO along. In most cases, we're seeing the Minister of Electricity with the acting head or the head of generation, which is a few steps below in terms of governance. So if I was the chairperson of Eskom, I would raise an issue with something like that in terms of governance processes. But we understand, that the fact that this is now business unusual.
Yeah.
we're dealing with an unusual and a challenge that government is facing and trying to resolve. But we can't rule the governance issues out of this particular matter, because for me, there's a huge gray area that has been created so far.
Two things. Let's see if we'll be able to cover them in the time that we have. One, Eskom says they are increasing planned maintenance from approximately they're sitting around 2,000 megawatts to about 5,381 megawatts, so almost doubling that. We saw during the winter period where they had to scale down a little bit so that we don't have as many units offline, but they are saying now they will ramp it up in terms of their plan for summer. But also what they are seeing is that because of the planned maintenance that they have been doing deliberately, the units are not breaking down as often as they used to. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, they've done quite a lot of good work. And here we're dealing with a system that is not reliable, a system that can break down at any point in time. They've done quite well in terms of the maintenance program. We have been sitting at about plus or minus 18,000 megawatts. That's down on breakdowns plus partial load losses. We're now sitting at about 13,000 megawatts. It took them time to move from about 15,000 megawatts to 13,000 megawatts. The question for now is whether they will be able to maintain that 13,000 megawatts for the next 2 to 3 months, because what we've realized is that with time we start to see breakdowns in other units or other power stations that they have not maintained. I understand when they ramp up maintenance during the time when the demand is low, like now when they push the maintenance to about 5,000 megawatts, that's what they should be doing. They shouldn't do away with what we call philosophy maintenance or reliability maintenance, because if you don't do that, in the medium to long term, you start to run into problems of breakdowns and high levels of partial load losses. So even though we're sitting on load shedding, it's something that Eskom needs to implement. It's like what the minister was saying, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. The question then is whether in that long-term gain, will we still see the long-term gain? Eskom themselves, they have released a detailed document that is talking to the load shedding and the system performance for the next 12 to 13 months. And that document is talking about the fact that we should brace ourselves for between stage 2 and stage 3 load shedding for the next 12 to 13 months if nothing happens. Now, if you look at the Energy Action Plan, and this is something that I've been saying for quite a long time, the minister seems to focus more on one aspect of the Energy Action Plan when he gives his media briefings. The Energy Action Plan has got 5 pillars. And if you look at the other 4 pillars that the minister never touches on or touches on in passing, there's quite a lot of other work that's happening that could augment the work that Eskom is doing. For instance, we've got about 4 gigawatts of rooftop solar PV that has been installed by businesses and households. And most of them were taking advantage of the government's regulations and the rebate program, where you get some money back when you put up your solar PV on your roof. And that is part of the Energy Action Plan, which the minister should also be able to latch on and tell the nation what is happening in that particular space, because that also helps, especially during the day. When the system is constrained and the people have got that 4 gigawatt is alive, then it helps in terms of easing the pressure on the grid. There's quite a lot of other aspects, such as your breaking up of Eskom into 3 generation units. the minister has not touched on that in terms of the progress that is being made in that particular area. The new generation capacity coming from the private sector, we have about 10,000 megawatts that has been registered with NERSA. I think we need to look at that to say when will that 10,000 megawatts come live? The minister must tell us, and what will be the impact on the grid. So there's quite a lot of things that government has done in terms of opening up the electricity sector and many other things which are helping, which the minister is not necessarily telling the nation.
Capacity of distribution infrastructure being threatened by illegal connections. The current strategy is seemingly not working. In some instances, it is overpowered by groundswell from communities that threaten to bombard the technicians if they try and disconnect. And they've tried to persuade people to smart meters, also seemingly not much of an uptake. How else do they deal with illegal connection?
So the studies have shown that not all people who are connected illegally are people who don't necessarily afford to pay for electricity. There are people who afford to pay a certain amount of money, and in most cases, they are paying this money to the illegal connectors. So basically, Eskom and the municipality lose money that goes to people who have connected other people illegally. So one of the things to deal with this particular matter is basically to ensure that those who are illegally connected are legally connected, they are legalized, and those who cannot afford to pay for the services, they are put into the government programs. We've got a program where government gives the poor about 50 kilowatt hours per month. And that goes a very long way, because if you give them 50 kilowatt hours per month and then you ask them to say at the end of the 50 kilowatt hours, whatever you use before the month ends, you need to pay. Then they will be able to pay a certain amount, and it can take them to a certain extent. There is also aspects of energy efficiency, where government can then implement energy efficiency programs alongside these connections, where they basically educate people to say, when you've got 50 kilowatt hours of electricity that we're giving you, this is how best you can use it, and these are the kind of appliances that you need to buy that can assist you in terms of using less energy. So that's one way of dealing with illegal connections, as opposed to just going there, disconnect people, and then run away. People will be resistant towards that kind of an approach. There's a need for a better approach in terms of doing this. The city of Cape Town has got quite some good experience when it comes to this.
Yeah.
In most cases, when they see illegal informal settlements, they electrify them.
Prof, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much for coming on. Professor Sampson Mamphweli, African National Energy Development Institute Secretariat.